You know, sometimes I think the great joke of existence is how earnest we all become about it. How we stride through the days like clerks in some cosmic office, ticking boxes, pushing papers of purpose, stamping meaning upon each passing hour, as though life itself were waiting for our report. And yet, there's no one to submit it to. No final auditor in the sky. No stern examiner with a clipboard marking your progress. Only you caught in the delicious confusion of being alive, trying, in all your seriousness, to prove something to yourself that never truly needed proof. See, the trick of life is not to solve it, but to play with it. To realize that the whole business of being this strange dance of laughter and tears was never meant to be taken as a test. We are the only species that seems embarrassed about being here. A cat doesn't wake in the morning worrying whether it's living up to its potential as a cat. A tree doesn't compare its branches to the next trees. But we humans, oh, how we fret. We spend our lives straightening imaginary ties, rehearsing for some performance that never actually begins. You are here, breathing, hearing these words, and all the things you've been trying so hard to achieve, all the roles you've played, the impressions you've crafted, they're like costumes in a grand play. Beautiful, yes, but only costumes. Imagine for a moment that you're at a masquerade ball. Everyone's dressed in their finest, masks glittering, music swelling. You could spend the evening worrying whether your costume is convincing, or you could dance. You could laugh, spill your drink, twirl a stranger, forget for a while who's behind the mask. And in that forgetting, you find yourself, because the point of the ball was never the mask, you see. It was the dance. So many people live as though the music must be analyzed, the steps perfected, the outcome secured. But life isn't an exam. It's jazz improvised, surprising, playful. It happens through you, not because of you. When you try too hard to hold it, it wriggles away. When you laugh and let it move, it carries you. I once met a man who was very serious about being spiritual. He sat so upright in meditation that you could hang a coat on his back. His brow furrowed, his lips pursed, as though enlightenment was something he might force open by sheer posture. And I thought, poor fellow, he's working far too hard to let go. The more you grip the idea of awakening, the further it runs. The harder you try to become serene, the louder the mind protests. Until, in sheer exhaustion, you laugh and there it is. The peace you were chasing was the laughter itself. Seriousness is a subtle form of fear. It's the mind's way of saying, if I relax, everything will fall apart. But what if just imagine the very thing you're trying to hold together never needed your grip at all? Like a child holding a soap bubble, terrified it will burst. And yet when the bubble does burst, what remains? Only a little shimmer, a smile, and the air itself unchanged. Life is full of bursting bubbles, relationships, jobs, identities, plans. They shimmer for a time and then they go. But the air remains. You, the space in which it all happens, are never diminished. Don't take life so seriously, because it's not a fixed thing to be mastered. It's a living movement, a play that unfolds through laughter, error, and wonder. Have you noticed how children approach the world? When they play, they're utterly absorbed knights, explorers, monsters, but never solemn. They can die dramatically on the battlefield, and 5 seconds later, rise to become astronauts. They take the game seriously only while it's being played. They don't mistake it for life itself. And yet, as adults, we forget. We become accountants of the soul, measuring progress, counting virtues, comparing destinies. We think that if we worry enough, we'll somehow protect ourselves from loss. But worry doesn't guard you. It only drains the color from the moment you already have. Try an experiment sometime. Go about your day as though it were a kind of dream. When you wake in the morning, see if you can notice the absurdity, this curious creature you are, getting up, brushing teeth, making coffee, speaking words into the air, and calling it conversation. It's all wonderfully strange. And yet, when you notice that strangeness, not mockingly but tenderly, something opens, a freedom. Because in that moment, you're no longer trapped in the performance. You're watching it with affection. You begin to see that life doesn't need to be conquered or explained or tamed. It only asks to be noticed and perhaps chuckled at. For instance, think of how people argue about meaning. Philosophers, theologians, scientists, all terribly serious men, shaking fists of intellect at the mystery of being. But what if the mystery was never meant to be solved? What if it's an invitation to dance? Meaning isn't a riddle to be cracked. It's a song to be sung. And you can't sing it with clenched teeth. So relax your grip. Let yourself be a little foolish. Let life surprise you. When you walk down the street, look at people's faces, the tension, the furrowed brows, the silent rehearsals of imagined conversations. Everyone trying to manage life rather than live it. But the beauty of being human is that you can step out of that management role. You can drop the clipboard and just watch the show. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is laugh at your own seriousness. Because, you see, when you laugh, you return to the center. Not the shallow laughter of mockery, but the deep, unguarded laughter that says, "Ah, I see. It was never as heavy as I thought." That's the laughter of release. The moment you realize that even your confusion, your mistakes, your longing are part of the great comedy. A friend once told me, "I take my responsibilities very seriously." And I said, "That's fine, just don't take yourself seriously." Because you can care deeply about things, work hard, love fiercely, and still know it's all play. Seriousness isn't the same as sincerity. You can be sincere without being solemn. In fact, the most profound people I've met are the ones who carry a quiet sparkle in their eyes, as if they've seen through the game and decided to keep playing anyway. You see, when you stop taking life so seriously, you don't become careless, you become carefree. There's a difference. One is neglect, the other is liberation. Stop and listen to yourself thinking. You'll hear the mind whispering all sorts of things. Be better, do more, prove it, fix it. But who is listening? Who watches those thoughts come and go? That stillness behind the voice, that's you. And that stillness is untouched by any of it. No matter how dramatic the play becomes, the audience remains unharmed. You are the audience, not the actor. And once you remember that, the play becomes delightful again. Now, this doesn't mean you should retreat from life or stop caring about what happens. Not at all. In fact, when you no longer cling to outcomes, you can engage more fully because you're not acting out of fear, you're acting out of curiosity. Imagine painting a picture. If you're obsessed with how it will turn out, your hand tightens, your strokes become hesitant. But if you paint for the joy of movement, the colors sing. That's how life works too. The universe is not asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to participate. When you stop taking it so seriously, you stop resisting its rhythm. You become, quite naturally, in tune. And this is the quiet secret behind laughter, behind spontaneity, behind peace. It's not something you achieve. It's something you allow. So, let it be light. Let your own existence be a kind of gentle smile, not a grin of denial, but a calm acknowledgement that this whole thing, this life, is utterly miraculous and profoundly absurd at the same time. The human being is the cosmic joke telling itself. And the punchline is always you. See, when you begin to loosen your grip on the seriousness of it all, something extraordinary happens. You start to breathe differently. You start to see how much effort it actually took to hold up that heavy mask, the one called me. And when you finally set it down, what relief. You discover that the one you were pretending to be was never truly necessary. That life has been quite content to carry on quite merrily. In fact, without your constant supervision. It's as if you've been standing by a river, scooping the water with both hands, desperately trying to control its flow. And the river simply laughs and continues downstream. The great mischief of being human is this. We imagine that we must make life happen, when in truth, life is happening all by itself. The heart beats, the lungs breathe, thoughts appear and dissolve. You didn't order these functions, you inherited them. They are gifts, spontaneous, effortless, unearned. And yet we wander about, worrying whether we're doing life right. It's rather like the waves wondering whether they're waving properly. Now, I don't say this to mock our seriousness. It comes from a beautiful impulse, the wish to do well, to be worthy, to make sense of it all. But somewhere along the way, that impulse hardens into tension. We forget that worthiness was never a qualification, it was the starting point. A child doesn't ask, "Do I deserve to play?" It just plays. And in doing so, it becomes the pure expression of life itself. Can you imagine if the universe required a license to exist? If before every sunrise, there had to be an official signature granting permission? Ridiculous, isn't it? And yet, many of us live as though we're waiting for that permission to relax, to laugh, to be ourselves. The whole trick, you see, is realizing that you're already approved. Existence is your invitation. The problem with taking life too seriously is that it turns this grand adventure into a chore. We become like bureaucrats in our own hearts, stamping every joy with suspicion, filing away every moment into categories of success or failure. But life, my dear friend, doesn't work in spreadsheets. It dances in spirals, not straight lines. The moments that really matter, the ones that change you, are never the ones you planned. They happen in the small absurdities, the misplaced key that leads to a new conversation, the mistake that becomes an opportunity, the laughter that breaks through tears. It's all beautifully unplanned. When you stop taking life so seriously, you begin to notice its artistry. The way everything seems to balance chaos and order, gain and loss, the tragic and the comic, like a cosmic juggler keeping the whole act alive. And you are part of that juggling act. Not as a burden, but as a rhythm. You might fall from time to time, of course you will, but even the fall is part of the dance. Imagine a comedian who never makes a mistake, never forgets a line. Wouldn't that be dreadfully dull? The beauty of the performance lies in its fragility, the risk that something might go wrong. That's what makes it alive. And that's what makes you alive. So, when you stumble, don't scold yourself. Smile. You're improvising. The universe loves a good improvisation. You see, this is what we forget when we take ourselves too seriously, that we are, each of us, improvisations. There's no final script, no master plan etched in stone. Life is not a rule book, it's a jazz session. You come in with your instrument, listen to the others, find your rhythm, and play. Some notes will clash, others will soar. And at the end, all that remains is the music. When you see this clearly, you begin to understand that there's no real separation between the sacred and the ordinary. The laughter of a child, the smell of morning coffee, the awkward silence between two people, all of it is sacred, precisely because it's so fleeting. Don't be fooled into thinking enlightenment is something distant, wrapped in incense and robes. It's right here in the ordinary absurdity of things. In the way your shoe squeaks on a rainy street, in the way your mind drifts while waiting at a red light, in the way you catch yourself being terribly serious, and then for no reason you laugh. That's it. That laughter is enlightenment, because in that instant, the whole pretense collapses. The heavy machinery of me pauses, and what remains is just life, as it is. That's the secret. Enlightenment isn't something you add to yourself, it's what's left when you stop pretending. Now, I can almost hear your mind asking, but if I don't take life seriously, won't I become lazy or careless? Ah, but notice that seriousness talking again. Seriousness always disguises itself as responsibility. But true responsibility doesn't come from fear, it comes from love. When you love a flower, you water it not because you're serious about flowers, but because it brings you joy. When you love a person, you care for them not as an obligation, but as a natural expression of your being. And when you love life, truly love it, you participate in it wholeheartedly, playfully, freely. You act not because you must, but because you may. So let the seriousness drop. Let yourself be moved by the music. When joy calls, answer. When sorrow arrives, welcome it too, not as an enemy, but as another note in the melody. After all, even the saddest song is beautiful when you stop resisting its tune. Life doesn't ask you to always smile, it asks you to feel. It doesn't demand perfection, it invites participation. There's an old saying, angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. Perhaps that's the simplest wisdom of all. To take yourself lightly, not flippantly, not irresponsibly, but lightly, as in with grace, as if your very being were a dance of air, passing through this moment just long enough to notice it. So, what would it be like, right now, to take yourself lightly, to set aside every idea of what you should be, and simply be as you are, a temporary expression of the infinite, humming along for a brief, miraculous instant? Once you taste that lightness, you find that life no longer needs to be conquered or controlled. You begin to trust it. You realize that the same intelligence that makes a seed bloom and the stars burn is moving through you, guiding you in ways your mind could never calculate. And in that trust, there is peace. You can walk through the world with a kind of gentle humor, the humor of someone who knows that even their mistakes are divine mischief. You can meet the unknown not with dread, but with curiosity. You can love without needing to own, work without needing to win, live without needing to justify. For the moment you stop taking life so seriously, you return to its center where joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death are all part of one vast, laughing rhythm. Listen. The laughter of existence is everywhere. It hums through the heart, through the wind, through every passing glance between strangers. It says, "Don't you see, it's all right. You're already home." And so, when you wake tomorrow, when you step once more into the curious play of ordinary life, remember, you are not required to have it all figured out.
You see, we spend most of our lives trying to get money, but very few ever stop to ask why they want it in the first place. We chase money as though it's oxygen, as though without it, we cannot live, breathe, or be happy. But have you noticed that the more desperate you are for it, the more it seems to run away? And when you finally stop running, when you stop chasing, it often seems to find its way to you effortlessly, like a bird that lands quietly on your shoulder when you're still. It's quite a curious thing. You want money because you want freedom, but in the chase for money, you often lose the very freedom you were seeking. You become anxious, impatient, and trapped by your own desire. You become like a man digging for water in the desert who forgets that the oasis was already inside him. Now, I want to tell you a secret that life has been whispering to you all along. The money comes faster when you stop needing it to come. When you stop begging the universe with the vibration of lack and begin to live as though you already possess abundance, everything begins to flow differently. Because reality, my dear friend, is not responding to your words. It is responding to your state of being. When you say, "I want more money," what you are really declaring is, "I don't have enough." And that feeling, that inner frequency, is what the world mirrors back to you. The universe is not your servant. It is your reflection. And whatever you feel most strongly becomes the signal it sends right back. I remember once saying that desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. You see, that is the trap when you tie your joy, your sense of self, your peace of mind to the arrival of money. You postpone happiness indefinitely. You wait for the outside world to change before you permit yourself to feel whole inside. But reality does not work that way. Reality rearranges itself around the vibration you are embodying. Now, the moment you say, "I will be happy when I have money," you are broadcasting to existence that you are not yet happy. And existence simply reflects that. It will keep giving you situations that confirm your belief. This is why people stay poor, not because of a lack of effort, but because of the emotional atmosphere they live in, the inner weather they keep repeating each day. But imagine for a moment if you reversed it. What if you decided to feel abundant before the money comes? What if you walked through life with the vibration of someone who already has more than enough? What if you practiced gratitude not as a trick to get something, but as a state of genuine recognition that life itself is already full? Here's the paradox. The moment you stop using gratitude to manipulate the future, it actually begins to change. When you are no longer thanking the universe because you want it to do something for you, and instead thank it because you realize it already has, you step into the creative flow that allows more to come easily. Most people think they must do something to attract abundance. But the real secret is not in the doing, it's in the being. When your inner world is aligned with wealth, when you think, feel, and act like a person who already has it, is inevitable that your outer world will rearrange to reflect that. Because what you truly are inside cannot help but radiate outward. Think of it this way. You do not get money by running after it, just as you do not catch your own shadow by chasing it. You align with the light, and the shadow follows naturally. Money is the same. It is the shadow of your inner vibration. It follows the light of your consciousness. And the brighter that light, the faster the shadow moves to you. You see, money is not a reward from life. It is an expression of energy, a symbol of exchange, an extension of flow. When you are in a state of openness, creativity, and service, when you are genuinely giving your energy to life in a joyful way, money flows naturally as part of that current. But when you contract, when you tighten up with fear or lack, you dam the river. You block the current that was trying to bring you more. And this is the great irony of abundance. The tighter you hold on to it, the less you have. The more you let go, the more you receive. When you understand this, you begin to see why some people seem to magnetize wealth effortlessly. It's not that they are more intelligent, or luckier, or blessed by fate. It's that they have stopped resisting life. They have stopped sending out signals of fear and scarcity. They are not trying to get, they are allowing themselves to be. Now, what does this mean in practical terms? It means that if you wish for money to come faster, you must stop worshipping it. You must stop seeing it as your savior. You must begin to see it for what it truly is, an echo of your inner abundance, a reflection of your relationship with yourself. Ask yourself, how do I feel when I think about money? If you feel tense, anxious, impatient, or guilty, those are the vibrations you are feeding into the field. That is the emotional music you are playing to the universe. And the universe always dances to your tune. If your song is one of desperation, it will send you experiences that match desperation. If your song is one of ease, gratitude, and joy, then it will send you experiences that match that too. So instead of asking, how can I get more money? Ask, how can I feel more abundant right now? Because that feeling is the real currency. Money follows the feeling, not the other way around. You don't wait for a heater to get warm before turning it on. You generate the warmth first. The same applies here. You don't wait for external wealth to create internal abundance. You create the inner abundance, and the external wealth appears as a consequence. Now, the modern mind finds this deeply uncomfortable because we've been conditioned to believe that hard work and struggle are the only valid ways to succeed. We are taught to grind, to compete, to strive. But the truth is, effort without alignment is wasted energy. You can row a boat tirelessly, but if it's facing the wrong direction, you'll never reach your destination. When you are aligned internally, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are coherent, things begin to move swiftly, almost magically. Doors open without effort. Opportunities appear where none existed. People show up at the right moment. You call it coincidence, but it's simply coherence at work. The universe is a field of infinite intelligence, responding to frequency. Every thought, every emotion, every belief you hold emits a vibration. When your vibration says, I am abundant, the field mirrors it with situations that confirm that truth. But when your vibration says, I'm lacking, it reflects lack. You cannot deceive the universe. It doesn't listen to your words. It reads your energy. And so, money is not something you earn as much as something you allow. It comes through you, not to you. It flows through the channels of your belief, your gratitude, your openness, and your creativity. It comes faster when you stop pushing it away with resistance and begin to trust that it is part of the same flow that gives breath, sunlight, and life itself. When you truly grasp this, you'll understand why so many spiritual teachers speak about surrender not as a form of passivity, but as a deep act of trust. To surrender is not to sit and do nothing. It is to stop forcing things to happen. It is to stop resisting the natural rhythm of life. It is to know that you are already connected to everything you need. and that your only task is to align with it internally. You cannot attract abundance from a state of frustration. You cannot call in wealth from a vibration of need, because in that vibration, you are telling the universe that you are separate from abundance, and so you remain so. But when you relax, when you breathe deeply and truly feel that life itself supports you, money begins to flow toward you, not as a bribe, not as a prize, but as a natural expression of your trust. So, the doing that brings money faster is not doing in the conventional sense. It is not about hustling harder, or making more lists, or pushing yourself into exhaustion. It is the inner work, the aligning of your state with the energy of abundance. It's the silent practice of tuning your mind and emotions until they sing in harmony with prosperity. You don't need to manipulate the world. You need to harmonize with it. When you do, the world responds with synchronicity, grace, and ease. Now, let's talk about something even deeper, the energy behind the intention. Why do you want money? Truly? Most people say because I want to feel free, or I want to feel safe. But freedom and safety are not things that come after money. They are the states that allow money to arrive. When you feel free now, the vibration of freedom attracts experiences that match it, including financial opportunities. When you feel safe now, the vibration of safety magnetizes circumstances that confirm your safety, including money. So you must become the thing you wish to attract long before it appears. This is the mystical law of resonance, the same law that governs sound, music, and even the orbits of planets. If you listen to an orchestra, you'll notice that every instrument plays in harmony when tuned to the same frequency. Life operates the same way. When you tune your consciousness to the frequency of wealth through gratitude, trust, and joy, everything around you begins to harmonize. People, events, and ideas tune themselves to your vibration, and suddenly, what once seemed impossible becomes effortless. But if your inner world is dissonant, if one part of you believes in abundance while another part clings to fear, you create interference. You send mixed signals to the field, and the universe does not know which one to reflect. That's why self-awareness is the foundation of manifestation. You must become aware of the stories you tell yourself about money, the fears you inherited, the limitations you absorbed, the beliefs that no longer serve you. Because your beliefs are not truths. They are choices you've repeated so often that they've hardened into reality. But the moment you see them clearly, they begin to dissolve, and in their place, new possibilities emerge. When you begin to observe your relationship with money without judgment, something remarkable happens. You start to see that the anxiety, the grasping, the need to control, none of it is truly about the money itself. It's about what you believe money will fix. Somewhere deep within, you've been taught that money is the bridge between where you are and the life you want. But the truth is much gentler, much more profound. The bridge is your consciousness itself. If your consciousness is rooted in fear, you could win the lottery tomorrow and still feel unsafe. You could have millions in your account and yet feel poor inside. You'd still check your balance, still worry about losing it, still carry that faint vibration of not enough. Because wealth is not the amount of money you have, it's the amount of peace you feel when you have it. So what truly brings the money faster? Paradoxically, it is the release of the need for it. It is the moment when you realize that money was never the goal. It was only the mirror reflecting how deeply you trust life. When you trust completely, you become like the ocean that never worries whether it will receive another wave. You simply exist in the rhythm of give and take, ebb and flow. Consider how nature operates. The tree doesn't demand sunlight. It allows the sun to reach it. The river doesn't force its current. It simply flows according to gravity. The flower doesn't chase the bee. It blooms. And the bee arrives naturally. Yet humans, with all their cleverness, have managed to complicate the very principle of abundance. We've turned life into a contest. And in that contest, we've forgotten how to receive. To receive is not an act of laziness. It is an act of openness. And that openness is born of trust. When you trust that life supports you, you are no longer trying to force things into existence. You become receptive to the infinite possibilities already surrounding you. You stop narrowing your vision to the single path you believe will make you rich, and instead begin to see the countless other ways abundance can reach you. I once said that the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious, yet everyone rushes around in a panic, as though it were necessary to achieve something beyond that. This panic is the same one that makes you chase money. But if you pause, just pause and truly see where you are, you may notice that life is already taking care of you in thousands of invisible ways. The breath entering your lungs, the sunlight warming your skin, the way your body repairs itself without your command. These are all signs that abundance is already happening, here and now. When you feel that deeply, gratitude arises naturally, not as a mental exercise, but as a spontaneous recognition of how miraculous it all is. And in that recognition, your vibration shifts. The desperate current of I need softens into I am provided for. The clenched fist opens, and suddenly the river of prosperity can flow again. So, if you wish to make money come faster, stop thinking of it as something outside of yourself. Begin to treat every thought, every emotion, every action as a form of energetic currency. Ask yourself, what am I investing my energy in today? Are you spending it on worry, on comparison, on self-doubt? Or are you investing it in creativity and generosity and trust? Because whatever you give your attention to grows. Money follows energy, and energy follows attention. That is the secret that the mystics and the physicists both agree upon. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are a participant in creation. Now, let's explore a simple shift that can transform your relationship with money almost overnight. Instead of asking, how can I get more? Ask, how can I give more? Not give more out of guilt, but out of abundance. Not because you feel obligated, but because giving affirms that you have more than enough. When you give freely, whether it's your time, your kindness, your talent, or your resources, you are declaring to the universe, I am abundant. And the universe, always echoing your state, responds in kind. It cannot help but fill the space you have opened. You become a conduit rather than a container, and the flow accelerates through you. But remember, giving must come from authenticity, not performance. If you give with the hidden hope that it will make you rich, the vibration of need still dominates, and the current remains slow. But if you give because you truly feel rich already, that energy becomes magnetic. People, opportunities, and ideas are drawn to that field of genuine abundance. Have you noticed how easy it is to trust people who are at peace with themselves? You can feel it even before they speak. Their presence radiates calm, their words carry weight, and their actions flow effortlessly. That is what money responds to. It flows toward coherence, confidence, and ease. It avoids confusion, desperation, and fear. So, your task is not to convince money to come. It is to become the kind of person money enjoys being around. You do this through presence, through awareness, through the simple act of bringing yourself back again and again to the truth that everything you need is already here in potential form. When you act from that knowing, your energy field becomes clear. You stop vibrating in two directions at once. You stop saying, I believe I can be wealthy, while secretly fearing that you can't. You begin to live from the state of I already am. That's when the miracles begin, not because the universe suddenly starts paying attention to you, but because you finally start paying attention to the universe. Now, let me tell you a small story, one that carries within it the essence of this whole teaching. There was once a man who lived in a small village. He worked tirelessly every day, hoping to save enough to build a better life. He counted his coins carefully, feared spending them, and went to sleep each night worrying that they would vanish. One day, a wise traveler passed through the village and said to him, Why do you worry so much? The field you work in is full of gold. The man laughed. Nonsense, he said. I've worked that field for 20 years. There's only dirt and sweat in it. The traveler smiled. Look again, he said. Not with your eyes, but with your heart. The man was puzzled, but that night he sat quietly under the stars, and for the first time in years, he stopped worrying. He felt the cool wind, the hum of crickets, the quiet pulse of life around him. Something inside him softened. And the next morning, when he returned to the field, he noticed things he'd never seen before: the richness of the soil, the patterns of light, the gentle rhythm of the earth. He began to work differently, no longer with tension, but with joy. And within a year, his crops multiplied beyond measure. He realized then that the field had always been full of gold. It was his own vision that had been poor. You see, wealth does not come from outside. It comes through perception. When your eyes change, your world changes. And so, perhaps the greatest practice for attracting money faster is not affirmations, not strategy, not even meditation in the usual sense. It is awareness. Awareness of your own inner dialogue, awareness of the stories you tell about scarcity and struggle. When you see them clearly, you stop feeding them with belief. And in that very moment, your vibration shifts. Some people ask, but Alan, if I stop worrying, if I stop caring so much about money, won't I become lazy? Won't I stop trying? To that I say, no, you will finally begin living. For what we call laziness is often just the absence of fear. When you stop working out of fear, you begin creating out of love. You become more efficient, more inspired, and far more magnetic. Because action born of joy is infinitely more powerful than action born of worry. So here's what I suggest. Begin every morning with a moment of quiet acknowledgement. Before you look at your phone, before you check your bank account, close your eyes and say softly to yourself, I am supported by life. I am connected to abundance. I am already enough. Feel it not as a mantra to fix something, but as a truth that is already here. Let that feeling expand in your chest until it fills your body. Then go about your day as if this were true. Spend money with joy, not fear. Speak about your goals with ease, not anxiety. Notice the small gifts life brings: a kind word, a smile, a new idea, and treat them as signs that abundance is flowing. Because it is. You will find that when you stop chasing, things begin to chase you. The phone rings, opportunities appear, coincidences multiply. This is not superstition, it is physics. The vibration you emit shapes the field around you. And when that vibration says, I already have, the universe replies, indeed you do. Understand, though, that this is not a one-time trick. It is a way of being. You must keep returning to it every time your old conditioning tries to pull you back into fear. Every time you notice yourself tightening, judging, or doubting, simply pause. Take a breath. Remember the truth. Money is not your source. Life is. And life is infinite. As this awareness deepens, something even more extraordinary begins to happen. You start to see that what you really desired was never the money itself. It was expansion, expression, and experience. Money was just one of the ways life could deliver that. Once you realize that, the universe becomes infinitely creative in how it supports you. Sometimes the abundance comes as money. Sometimes it comes as opportunity, love, or insight. But it always comes. And in that realization, you are free. Because when you are no longer dependent on one form of abundance, you open yourself to all of them. You stop being a beggar at the door of life and remember that you are, in fact, life itself, endless, expressive, abundant. So the money comes faster by doing this, by being what you seek, by letting go of the constant effort to acquire and instead embody the state of already having, by relaxing into the present moment and trusting that life is intelligent enough to arrange itself on your behalf. You don't attract wealth by chasing wealth. You attract it by living richly rich in thought, in gratitude, in giving, in trust. And when you live that way, the external wealth has no choice but to match it. Remember, life does not reward desperation, it mirrors vibration. So practice joy now. Practice generosity now. Practice the feeling of abundance now. And soon, you will find that the money was never late. It was simply waiting for you to arrive at the right frequency. Because in the end, abundance is not something you pursue, it is what you are. And when you realize that fully, you'll laugh, as I often do, at the cosmic joke of it all, that you were never trying to get money. You were only trying to remember that you already had everything you needed to let it flow.
There comes a point in nearly every life when faith, in any form, begins to crumble. It doesn't matter whether you call it faith in God, faith in people, faith in progress, or even faith in yourself. There comes a moment when all of it feels absurd, when the world appears to spin without reason, and you stand at the center wondering what on earth any of this is for. And you see, that is a very revealing place to arrive at, because the loss of faith is not the end of the spiritual journey. It is the beginning of it. We grow up believing that faith is something we must cling to, something we must protect from doubt like a fragile flame in a storm. But real faith does not need protection. Real faith is what remains when all beliefs have collapsed. For what you call belief is often only certainty dressed in spiritual clothing, and certainty is brittle, like glass. The moment life becomes unpredictable, it shatters. So what happens when your life stops making sense? When the things you trusted, religion, success, relationships, your very sense of purpose, seem hollow or even cruel. Most people panic. They rush to replace one belief with another. They switch religions, chase new philosophies, or drown themselves in distractions. But the wise do something very strange. They stop running. They stand still in the darkness and let the questions echo, because they know that doubt is not the enemy of faith. It is its purifier. You see, to lose faith is to lose the false ground on which you once stood. And that can feel like dying, because in a sense, it is. The self that you believed was secure, the one that thought it understood what life was, begins to dissolve. But what dies is not you. It is only the illusion that you ever knew what you were doing here. Faith, when it is real, is not a belief that things will be fine. It is the recognition that things already are fine, even when they appear chaotic. The universe is not obliged to make sense to the human mind. And the moment you stop demanding that it should, you begin to see that it is not senseless at all, it is simply vast. When we lose faith, what we are really losing is the idea that life should serve our understanding. We forget that the mind is not the master of life, but its expression. The mind is like a mirror, reflecting what appears before it. But we try to make it a sculptor, carving out meaning, demanding control, demanding permanence. And when reality refuses to conform, we call it meaningless. Yet the absurdity we feel is not in life itself, it is in our insistence that it must fit our definitions. Look carefully and you will see that every crisis of faith is an invitation to look without a map. And that is terrifying, because the map gives us the illusion of direction. We like to think we are on our way somewhere toward enlightenment, success, redemption. But what if the road itself is the destination? What if there is nowhere to arrive, nothing to prove, no cosmic verdict waiting at the end of time? The loss of faith strips away your idols one by one. It shows you that the gods you worshipped, your ideals, your philosophies, your achievements, were always carved from the same stone of thought. And when the stone cracks, you begin to see the emptiness beneath. That emptiness is not a void to fear. It is the space from which life itself emerges. When you lose faith, the ground beneath you disappears because it was never there to begin with. You realize that you have been walking on air the entire time. You begin to laugh, not because the situation is funny, but because you see how absurdly serious you've been about something that was never under your control. Life has never depended on your faith in it. It moves, breathes, and unfolds entirely on its own. The stars are not burning because you believe in them. The waves do not crash upon the shore because you understand the ocean. Life simply is, and your faith or lack of it has nothing to do with its being. This realization is both humbling and liberating. It humbles you because it shows that you were never the center of the story. But it liberates you because it means the story does not depend on you to continue. Losing faith is not a curse. It is a sacred disillusionment. The illusion that dies is the one that whispered, "You must know what this means." And when that illusion dies, what remains is raw experience, the taste of existence without interpretation, the rain falling without reason, the silence that follows your last question, the simple awareness that you are here, breathing, feeling, being. And then something extraordinary happens. In the very moment you stop trying to believe, you begin to see, not with the eyes of the intellect, but with the eyes of presence. You see that faith was never meant to be a belief. It was meant to be a way of seeing. So when you find yourself saying, "I've lost faith in life," pause for a moment. Notice that life has not lost faith in you. The sun still rises, the earth still turns, your heart still beats. Something larger than your understanding is carrying you even through this despair. And that, my friends, is the quiet beginning of real faith. Because faith, when it is pure, is not a conclusion, it is participation. It is the willingness to live without answers and to still marvel at the mystery. It is the courage to trust that what is unfolding is not happening to you, but through you. And when you reach that understanding, when you finally see that losing faith is the invitation to experience life without filters, you begin to see that what you called loss was only the breaking of a shell. Inside that shell, life itself has always been waiting, free, eternal, and complete. When you have truly lost faith, you are standing in a kind of spiritual silence. It is not comfortable at first. The mind screams for meaning. It wants the old symbols back, the gods, the promises, the goals. It wants the ground it used to walk upon. But silence, if you allow it, begins to reveal something extraordinary. You begin to sense that the meaning you were chasing was never out there waiting to be found. It was always in the act of looking itself. The very energy that drove you to seek purpose was the same pulse that creates suns and galaxies. You were never separated from meaning. You were meaning happening in human form. This is why despair can be such a sacred teacher. It is the gate through which the false self cannot pass. Every philosophy, every religion, every grand certainty eventually collapses under the weight of reality. Because life is too vast to fit inside a system of thought. And when your system collapses, you are not left with nothing, you are left with everything. You may have noticed that the people who seem most at peace are not those who have all the answers, but those who have stopped needing them. They laugh easily, they move freely, they are not anxious about being right. It's not that they've discovered some grand secret, it's that they have made peace with not knowing. They have learned to rest in the mystery instead of trying to solve it. You see, losing faith is not about losing your connection to life. It's about losing your illusion of separation. It's about realizing that life was never something happening to you, it was always happening as you. And when that realization dawns, it doesn't come as a thought. It comes as a feeling, a subtle warmth, a quiet recognition that you have always been home. Imagine a wave in the ocean, convinced that it is lost because it no longer feels the security of being near the shore. It forgets that it was never separate from the ocean in the first place. The wave cannot be lost because it is the ocean moving in form. You are that wave. The loss you feel is the ocean reminding you of what you are made of. When we lose faith, what actually happens is that the ego loses its foothold. The part of you that wanted life to serve its plans finally surrenders. You begin to see that life doesn't need your permission to unfold. And in that surrender, a space opens, a stillness that allows reality to be just as it is. That stillness is not apathy, it is awareness. Faith returns then, not as belief, but as trust. Not the trust that everything will go your way, but the trust that even when it doesn't, you are still a part of something immeasurably whole. It is like falling backward into the arms of the universe and discovering they were never not there. What you begin to realize is that life is not a riddle to be solved, but a song to be heard. You don't stand outside it, trying to decode the melody. You are one of the notes. The loss of faith becomes a deep listening, a return to the rhythm you had forgotten while trying so hard to understand the music. Look at a child playing in the sand. There is no agenda there, no doctrine, no search for purpose, and yet the play itself is full of purpose. Life in its purest form is self-fulfilling. The ocean waves not to reach the shore, but because waving is its nature. The stars do not shine to illuminate something else. They shine because shining is what they are. And when you understand this, you realize that you, too, are an expression of life being what it is. You begin to see that even your doubts, your losses, your long nights of the soul are part of that same dance. The darkness is not against the light, it defines it. Without doubt, faith would have no depth. Without loss, love would have no tenderness. Without death, life would have no urgency. Everything that frightened you was secretly working in your favor, shaping you into someone who could finally see without filters. And so, the true purpose of faith is not to escape suffering, but to see through it, to look pain in the eyes and realize that even it belongs. When the rain falls, it doesn't ask whether it is doing the right thing. It simply falls. When the wind blows, it doesn't question its direction. It moves, because that is what wind does. And when you lose faith, you too are simply passing through a natural season of the soul. Every human being will face this moment in some form. The mystics called it the dark night. The philosophers called it existential despair. But in truth, it is the same event the moment life strips you bare of all false meanings so that you may encounter the real one. And what is the real one? It cannot be said. Because the moment you say it, you turn it into a concept. But you can feel it like a quiet hum beneath everything that happens. It is the stillness between your thoughts, the pause before laughter, the silence that holds every sound. That silence, that hum, that awareness, that is faith itself. When you realize this, you stop searching for faith as something to hold on to. You begin to see that it was never lost. It only hid behind your attempts to define it. The divine, if you wish to call it that, is not something you find at the end of a road. It is what has been looking through your eyes all along. So when you say, "I've lost faith in life," look again. You haven't lost faith. You've simply lost your ideas about what life should be. And in that loss lies the opportunity to discover what life is. It is not a story with a happy ending. It is not a test to be passed. It is not a puzzle to be solved. It is an ever-unfolding mystery that invites you to participate. You are not meant to believe in it. You are meant to be it. The loss of faith is the final invitation to stop pretending, to stop performing, and to start living. It is the beginning of intimacy with reality. And that intimacy, once it awakens, is the quietest, most unshakable form of faith there is. For the one who has truly lost faith in life does not need to find it again. He realizes that life never asked for his faith in the first place. Life only asked him to see. There comes a time, after all the seeking, the meditating, the searching for answers, when something peculiar happens. You wake up one morning and realize that you simply don't care to go on improving yourself. The drive that once pushed you forward to become better, wiser, more enlightened, seems to have vanished. It's as though the wind that filled your sails has suddenly stopped, leaving you adrift in a vast and silent sea. And for many people, this feels terribly wrong. You see, we are trained from birth to believe that life must always be about progress, that we are here to grow, to strive, to push upward towards some imagined summit. Even in spirituality, this same mentality sneaks in through the back door. We meditate to get somewhere, to reach enlightenment, to become pure, serene, and wise. But then one day, you notice something has changed. You no longer feel that fire. You no longer have the same hunger for books, for teachings, for goals. And immediately, the mind begins to panic. It whispers, something has gone wrong. You've lost your way. But has it? Or could it be that you are, for the first time, standing still long enough to feel where you actually are? What most people call a lack of motivation is not the failure of the path, it is the flowering of it. It is the moment when the seeker begins to disappear, when the very energy that once fueled the search dissolves because there is no longer anything to seek. You see, the self that wanted to awaken was part of the illusion all along. The ego was wearing the mask of a saint, pretending to strive for transcendence while secretly feeding on the idea of progress. And when that mask falls away, when the show is over, the ego dies, and with it, the constant need to fix, improve, and achieve. Of course, to the mind, this feels like death. It says, what's the point now? If nothing needs to be done, what am I supposed to do? But that question itself is the echo of the old pattern, the assumption that life must always have a mission, a reason, a grand meaning. The truth is far more subtle, far more ordinary, and because of that, it often feels empty at first. Imagine you have been climbing a mountain for years, sweating and struggling toward a shining peak. Every step was driven by the belief that when you reached the top, everything would make sense. But when you finally arrive, you discover there is no temple, no secret waiting, no grand revelation, only the wide, silent sky. The mind doesn't know what to do with that. It expected fireworks, angels, transformation. Instead, it finds stillness. And so people come down from the mountain thinking something went wrong. I lost my motivation, they say. But what they've really lost is their illusion. They've discovered that all along, the journey was not about arriving anywhere, but about seeing through the need to arrive. This is why, after awakening, many people feel detached from ordinary life. The games they used to play, success, improvement, ambition, no longer hold the same charm. The taste has gone out of it. They find themselves watching the world continue its restless movement and wonder, why doesn't it feel real anymore? But this detachment is not apathy, it is clarity. You are seeing through the play, not rejecting it. It's like watching a drama on stage while knowing it's only a performance. The difference is, you no longer take it so seriously. You no longer believe that you are the character struggling for a happy ending. And yet, this clarity can be disorienting. The ego thrived on purpose, on doing, on effort. Without those, it feels useless, naked. It begins to whisper, you've lost your spark. You're becoming lazy. But what is laziness? It is a word we use to condemn stillness. We have been so deeply conditioned to equate motion with meaning that we cannot imagine that doing nothing could be intelligent. Consider nature. The tree does not strain to grow, it unfolds. The river does not push itself to flow, it moves because of gravity. The clouds drift, the seasons change, and not one of them needs a motivational quote to do so. Their being is their doing. They do not divide the world into progress and stagnation. They simply are, and that is enough. So when you find yourself unmotivated after awakening, it may not be a problem to solve, but a lesson to learn. Life is inviting you to rediscover a deeper rhythm, one that does not depend on the whip of the ego. For the first time, you are allowed to rest, to breathe, to exist without striving. And that can feel terrifying because it's so unfamiliar. The mind, when faced with stillness, becomes restless. It begins to invent new goals. Perhaps I should start manifesting. Perhaps I should find my life purpose. Perhaps I should help others awaken. These are subtle disguises of the same old game. The ego does not care what it's chasing, so long as it's chasing something. But awareness has no need to chase. It watches the play of desire rise and fall like waves upon the sea. It doesn't resist them, but it doesn't follow them either. It sees that all movement, even spiritual movement, happens within the same vast stillness that you already are. This is the irony of awakening. The moment you realize that everything is already it, you also realize that there's nothing left to do. And that's precisely when the human mind feels most lost. It craves projects, definitions, purposes. It asks, but what now? As though existence itself were not enough. You must understand motivation belongs to the realm of becoming, but awakening belongs to the realm of being. The two operate on different frequencies. When you awaken, the machinery of becoming winds down. It doesn't mean you'll never move again. It means movement will no longer be born of lack. And perhaps that is the true lesson. Before awakening, you act because you believe something is missing. After awakening, you see that nothing was ever missing, and so your actions change their flavor. They become spontaneous, effortless, playful. But before this natural action returns, there is often a long silence, a spiritual winter. In that winter, you may feel uninspired, tired, or disconnected. But don't try to fix it. It is not a mistake. It is a cleansing. The old motives are dissolving so that new, purer ones can appear not from the mind, but from life itself. Think of it like the stillness before spring. The ground looks barren, the air cold, the trees lifeless, but beneath the surface, everything is quietly preparing to bloom. In the same way, when your motivation disappears, your being is preparing to act again, not from compulsion, but from harmony. The secret is patience. Let yourself be still. Let the silence do its work. You don't need to invent meaning. Meaning will return on its own when the time is right. Because, you see, true purpose is not chosen, it's revealed. It's not something you plan, but something you notice. And it always arises when the ego has finally grown quiet enough to hear it. So if you find yourself drifting, don't panic. You haven't lost your way. You've simply stepped off the treadmill of constant doing. The world may call it laziness. Wisdom calls it awakening. Be still long enough, and you will see there is nothing wrong with the absence of drive. It is the space through which a new kind of energy begins to move, one that does not push, but pulls. Not ambition, but inspiration. Not pressure, but peace. And in that peace, life begins again, not as a project, but as a play. There is a moment after the long silence of awakening when life begins to move again, but it no longer moves the way it used to. The old urgency is gone. You are not driven by hunger anymore, yet somehow things still happen. Conversations appear, paths open, actions unfold. It is as if existence itself has taken over the steering wheel, and you are simply being carried. This is what the ancient sages called wu-wei, effortless action, the art of doing without forcing. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means allowing the natural rhythm of things to move through you. When the ego stops interfering, when it stops shouting, "I must," then life begins to act on its own behalf. You may notice that you start to do things not because you should, but because they simply feel appropriate in the moment. There is no debate, no inner argument. The same way a bird doesn't plan to sing and yet sings, you find yourself speaking, creating, walking, helping, without any agenda behind it. Action becomes spontaneous, graceful, almost playful. At first, this can feel strange. We have spent so many years measuring worth by productivity, that spontaneous action seems irresponsible. But in truth, the most natural work is done by those who have nothing to prove. When you are no longer seeking meaning, your every movement begins to express it. Think of the musician who stops performing to impress the crowd and instead plays for the sheer joy of sound. The melody that emerges from that state carries a depth no effort can produce. That is the same energy that returns after awakening, not ambition, but participation. You see, the problem with motivation, as the world understands it, is that it is always conditional. I must act in order to become. I must improve in order to deserve. But existence doesn't demand this bargain. The tree does not grow in order to earn sunlight. It grows because it is sunlight made visible. In the same way, when the illusion of separation fades, action becomes the natural radiance of being. When you realize this, life begins to flow again. Not because you make it flow, but because you stop standing in the way. You discover that inspiration arises like breathing, effortless, cyclical, renewing itself moment after moment. Yet even here, the mind sometimes returns with questions. If all is effortless, what about responsibility? What about discipline, goals? The world that still needs building. But understand, Wu Wei is not chaos, it is order, deeper than control. It is the rhythm that runs beneath both rest and movement. The river does not need discipline to find the sea. Its path is shaped by the very landscape it flows through. Your life is the same. Every bend, every still pool, every rushing drop, all are guided by the larger terrain of existence. When you trust that, you realize that the flow never truly stops. It only changes tempo. Of course, there will still be days of confusion, days of fatigue. Enlightenment doesn't erase your humanity. It deepens it. The body still grows tired, the heart still feels loss, the mind still wanders. But now you see these not as obstacles, but as part of the music. There is no need to fight the downbeat, for it gives meaning to the rise that follows. When motivation seems to fade again, smile. It is simply another tide turning. Rest when you rest, move when you move. The universe breathes through both. Something beautiful happens once you stop chasing constant growth. Gratitude begins to appear. Not the gratitude that says thank you for this blessing, but the quiet awareness that every breath is a blessing. When you wake up and realize you need nothing, everything you touch feels sacred. You begin to notice how even the smallest things shimmer with significance. The sound of a kettle, the shadow of leaves, the warmth of sunlight through the window. These were always there, but the noise of striving kept you from hearing them. Now, without the noise, life itself becomes your meditation. And from that simplicity, creativity returns. True creativity is not born from effort, but from emptiness. A cup must be empty to be filled. When you stop trying to produce meaning, meaning pours in. You might paint again, write again, work again, but the energy behind it has changed. It is no longer a performance. It is communion. This is why great art, great love, and great wisdom all arise from surrender. They come from those who have ceased demanding that life makes sense. For when you stop forcing it to be extraordinary, it reveals that it always was. So, you see, motivation after awakening doesn't vanish forever. It transforms. It shifts from personal will to universal will, from I must to it moves. You become the instrument through which life plays its tune. Some days it's gentle, some days wild, but every note belongs. If you watch carefully, you will notice that everything around you already lives this way. The stars do not compete for brightness, each shines where it is. The waves do not envy the tide, each rises and falls in perfect timing. Even the silence between sounds is part of the song. To live like this is not to escape the world, but to see it clearly for the first time. You don't retreat from life, you melt into it. Work still happens, Relationships still form, choices still appear, but they are lighter now, more fluid, less desperate. The strain is gone, and with that strain gone, a different kind of joy arises, not the explosive joy of victory, but the quiet joy of belonging. You realize you never had to conquer the world to find peace. You only had to stop fighting with it. In the end, what you called losing motivation was simply life changing its direction within you. You had been moving against the current for so long that when it finally turned you around, you mistook the ease for failure. But the current knows where it's going. It always has. So when you feel empty, remember, emptiness is not absence. It is space for new life to flow through. When you no longer rush to fill it, that is when the real work begins, the work that is done effortlessly, silently, perfectly. And one day, without planning it, you will notice yourself moving again, not because you decided to, but because the moment called for it. A friend will ask for help, a project will appear, a spark will rise. You will respond naturally, joyfully, without question. That is motivation after awakening, action born from stillness, movement rooted in peace. The paradox of it all is this: when you no longer need a reason to live, life gives you 1,000 of them. When you stop searching for purpose, purpose reveals itself in every gesture, every breath, every sunrise. So do not be troubled if your fire seems dim. The flame has not died, it has become light, and that light needs no fuel, it shines by its own nature. Rest in that knowing, act when it moves you. Trust that the same intelligence that turns the stars and blooms the flowers is guiding you now. You have not fallen off the path. You have simply arrived where the path was always leading, here in this unhurried now.
There's a peculiar phenomenon that occurs in human consciousness. And most people go through their entire lives without ever recognizing it. It's so fundamental, so pervasive, that it becomes invisible like the air we breathe or the water a fish swims in. And that phenomenon is this: nearly everything you do, nearly every decision you make, nearly every word you speak is filtered through a question that runs constantly in the background of your mind. That question is, what will they think of me? Now, you may not consciously ask this question. In fact, you probably believe you're acting independently, making your own choices, living your own life. But observe yourself carefully. Watch yourself in conversation. Notice how you choose your words, how you modulate your voice, how you present your opinions. Notice how much energy you expend trying to create a particular impression, trying to manage how others perceive you. This need for approval begins early, of course. As children, we quickly learn that our survival depends on pleasing the adults around us. A baby cries and mother comes. This is the first lesson in cause and effect, in the power of gaining another's attention and approval. As we grow, the pattern becomes more sophisticated. We learn to smile at the right moments, to say the things that earn praise, to hide the parts of ourselves that meet with disapproval or punishment. And gradually, imperceptibly, we construct a false self, a performing self, a self that exists primarily in the eyes of others. The tragedy is that we forget this is what we're doing. We identify completely with this performing self and mistake it for who we really are. We become so skilled at the performance that we no longer know where the performance ends and our authentic being begins, if indeed there's anything left of that authentic being at all. Now, what I want to talk about today is what happens when you stop this exhausting performance. What happens when you cease to seek the approval of others. And I want to be very clear about what I mean by this, because it's easily misunderstood. I'm not talking about becoming rude or inconsiderate. I'm not suggesting you should deliberately offend people or disregard their feelings. I'm not advocating for selfish behavior or cruelty. What I'm talking about is something far more subtle and far more profound. I'm talking about the moment when you stop organizing your entire existence around the question of whether others approve of you. This is a revolutionary shift in consciousness, because when you're constantly seeking approval, You're not really living your own life. You're living a kind of reflection of what you imagine others want you to be. And the exhausting thing is that these others are themselves seeking approval. So you're trying to please people who are trying to please people who are trying to please people, in an endless hall of mirrors where nobody is actually home. Let me describe what this approval-seeking looks like in practice. You're at a gathering, and someone asks your opinion about something, politics, religion, art, whatever it might be. Now, if you're honest with yourself, you'll notice that before you answer, there's a split-second calculation. You're quickly assessing the room, trying to determine what opinion will make you look good, what answer will earn respect or agreement or admiration. You're not asking yourself what you actually think. You're asking yourself what you should say to create the desired impression. Or consider your work, your career. How much of what you do is genuinely interesting to you, and how much is performed for the approval of employers, colleagues, society at large? How many people are in careers they don't enjoy, living lives that don't fit them, all because they're trying to meet someone else's expectations, parents, perhaps, or some abstract notion of success that they've absorbed from their culture? Or look at relationships. How often do people stay in friendships or romantic partnerships, not because these relationships nourish them, but because leaving would invite disapproval? How much suffering is endured? How much authenticity is sacrificed, all to avoid the judgment of others? The need for approval is a kind of prison. And like most prisons, it's largely invisible to those trapped inside it. You don't see the bars because you've been looking through them your whole life. They've become part of the landscape, part of the assumed structure of reality. But here's what's extraordinary. The moment you recognize this prison, the moment you truly see it for what it is, something begins to shift. And the moment you stop seeking approval, not as a rebellious act, not as a way of proving something, but simply because you see the futility and exhaustion of it, everything changes. Let me tell you what I mean by everything changes. First, you discover who you actually are. Not who you think you should be, not who others want you to be, but who you actually are beneath all the layers of performance and pretense. And this discovery is often surprising, because the authentic self is quite different from the performing self. The authentic self has different interests, different values, different desires than the self you've been presenting to the world. The authentic self might enjoy things you've been pretending not to enjoy. It might be drawn to paths you've been avoiding because they didn't seem respectable or impressive enough. It might have opinions that don't fit neatly into the categories that would win approval. When you stop seeking approval, you give yourself permission to discover these things. You can finally ask yourself, what do I actually enjoy? What actually interests me? What do I actually think about this? Not what should I enjoy, or what would make me look intelligent to think, but what's actually true for me. This is tremendously liberating, because you've been carrying around all these shoulds and oughts, all these ideas about who you're supposed to be, and suddenly you can put them down. You can stop performing. You can stop managing your image. You can simply be. Now, when this happens, something remarkable occurs in your relationships with others. The people who were drawn to your performing self, the people who approved of you as long as you played the role they wanted you to play, these people tend to fall away, and this can be painful. You may lose friendships, even family relationships. People may express disappointment, confusion, even anger. You've changed, they'll say, often with a tone of accusation. And it's true, you have changed. Or rather, you've stopped pretending. You've stopped contorting yourself to fit their expectations. And they experience this as betrayal because, in a sense, you've broken an unspoken contract. The contract was, I'll approve of you as long as you continue to be the person I want you to be. But here's what's extraordinary. At the same time that some relationships fall away, others deepen. Because when you stop performing, when you stop seeking approval, you become authentic. And authenticity has a magnetic quality. People who are themselves seeking authenticity, who are tired of superficial relationships and social games, are drawn to it. You begin to attract people who appreciate you for who you actually are, not for the mask you wear. And these relationships are profoundly different from approval-based relationships. They're based on genuine recognition, on actually seeing and being seen. They're nourishing rather than exhausting, because you're not constantly working to maintain an image. You can relax, you can be yourself. Moreover, when you stop seeking approval, you stop being manipulable. Think about how much of advertising, politics, social pressure operates through the mechanism of approval and disapproval. Buy this product and you'll be admired. Adopt this opinion and you'll be respected. Behave this way and you'll fit in. The entire machinery of social control depends on people desperately seeking approval. When you're no longer seeking approval, this machinery loses its power over you. You can't be controlled through shame or the promise of status. You are free to make decisions based on what's actually true for you, what actually serves your well-being and the well-being of others, rather than what will earn you gold stars from some authority or peer group. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to others. In fact, paradoxically, when you stop seeking approval, you often become more genuinely considerate. Because consideration that comes from seeking approval is really just another form of manipulation. You're being nice because you want something in return, even if what you want is just a positive opinion. But consideration that comes from simply recognizing others as fellow beings, not as sources of approval or disapproval, is authentic kindness. Now, I want to talk about the fear that arises when you contemplate stopping the approval-seeking behavior. Because there is fear, tremendous fear. The mind presents you with catastrophic scenarios. If I stop trying to please people, I'll be alone. I'll be rejected. I'll be cast out. I'll lose everything. And there's a reason for this fear. It goes back to our evolutionary history, to a time when being cast out of the tribe meant death. To be alone was to be vulnerable to predators, to starvation, to the elements. So the fear of disapproval is ancient and deep. It feels like a matter of survival. But here's what you must understand. That ancient fear is no longer relevant in the way it once was. You're not going to die if some people disapprove of you. You're not going to be cast out into the wilderness to face predators. The worst that can happen is that some people won't like you. And when you really examine this, when you really look at the prospect of some people not liking you, you realize it's not actually catastrophic. In fact, it's inevitable. No matter what you do, no matter how much you perform, some people won't like you anyway. There's a wonderful freedom in accepting this. Some people won't like you, and that's perfectly fine. You don't need universal approval. You don't need everyone to think well of you. You just need to live authentically and find the people who resonate with that authenticity. Let me share something from my own experience. For many years, particularly in my younger days, I was enormously concerned with what people thought of me. As someone interested in philosophy and religion, as someone who eventually became a teacher of sorts, I was constantly aware of my reputation. I wanted to be respected, to be taken seriously, to be admired for my knowledge and insight. And this concern shaped everything I did. It shaped what I wrote, what I said in lectures, even how I dressed and spoke. I was performing the role of the wise teacher, the knowledgeable philosopher. And it was exhausting, though I didn't fully recognize how exhausting until something shifted. The shift came gradually. Through my study of Zen, through my own meditation practice, through simply growing older and wearier of the performance, I began to care less about approval. I began to say what I actually thought rather than what would sound impressive. I began to admit when I didn't know something rather than pretending to knowledge I didn't have. I began to laugh at myself, to show my flaws and uncertainties. And do you know what happened? Some people were indeed disappointed. Some people decided I wasn't as wise as they'd thought, wasn't worthy of respect after all. But others, and these were the people who mattered, appreciated the authenticity. They found it refreshing. They felt they could finally relate to me as a human being rather than as an image or an authority. More importantly, I felt free. I could breathe. I could explore ideas without worrying whether they were respectable. I could admit confusion, doubt, not knowing. I could simply be myself, with all my contradictions and imperfections. And this freedom was worth infinitely more than any approval I'd been seeking. Now, let me speak about what happens in that moment when you stop seeking approval. And I do mean a moment, though it's also a process. There's often a specific moment of recognition, a shift in consciousness, where you suddenly see the whole game clearly. You see how much energy you've been expending on managing others' opinions. You see how futile it is, how exhausting, how it keeps you from actually living. In that moment, something drops away. The burden drops away, and there's a tremendous lightness, a sense of relief. It's as if you've been carrying a heavy load up a mountain your whole life, and suddenly you realize you can put it down. Nobody actually requires you to carry it. You were carrying it only because you thought you had to. This doesn't mean the old patterns instantly disappear. The habit of seeking approval is deeply ingrained. You'll still catch yourself doing it. Still notice that split-second calculation before you speak. Still feel that pang of anxiety when someone disapproves. But now you see it happening. You're aware of it. And awareness itself begins to dissolve the pattern. You start to notice, there it is again. I was about to modify what I was going to say because I was worried about what they'd think. And in noticing it, you have a choice. You can continue with the modification, or you can take a breath and say what you actually mean. Each time you choose authenticity over approval seeking, the pattern weakens a little more. And as the pattern weakens, everything does shift. Your relationships shift, as I've described. Your work shifts. You may find yourself drawn to different kinds of work, or approaching your current work in a different way. Your daily experience shifts because you're no longer expending so much energy on impression management. You have energy available for actually experiencing life, for being present, for engaging genuinely with whatever arises. Even your sense of self shifts, because when you're constantly seeking approval, your sense of self is fundamentally unstable. It depends on others' opinions, which are changeable and often contradictory. One person approves, another disapproves, and you're torn between them, not knowing who you are. But when you stop seeking approval, you discover a more stable sense of self, not a fixed, permanent self, but a sense of being that doesn't depend on external validation. This is what the Eastern traditions have been pointing to all along. The Taoists speak of Wu Wei, effortless action, acting from your true nature rather than from learned patterns and social conditioning. The Buddhists speak of dropping the ego, which is largely composed of these approval-seeking patterns and the images we present to others. The Hindus speak of discovering the Atman, the true self, beneath all the layers of social identity. When you stop seeking approval, you're not becoming a different person. You're stopping being all the false persons you've been pretending to be. You're allowing what you actually are to emerge and express itself naturally. Now, I want to address a question that often arises, but don't we need some social harmony? Don't we need to consider others? Won't everyone just become selfish and inconsiderate if they stop caring what others think? This question misunderstands what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting you become indifferent to others' well-being. I'm not advocating for selfish disregard of how your actions affect people. What I'm saying is that you can be genuinely considerate without seeking approval. In fact, approval seeking often makes people less genuinely considerate because they're focused on managing impressions rather than actually being present with others. Real consideration comes from empathy, from recognizing others as conscious beings like yourself, from naturally wanting to act in ways that don't cause unnecessary harm. This has nothing to do with seeking approval and everything to do with basic human decency and awareness. Moreover, much of what passes for social harmony is really just collective pretense. Everyone performing for everyone else. Nobody saying what they actually think or feel, all carefully maintaining acceptable facades. This isn't genuine harmony, it's a kind of mutual deception. Real harmony, real community can only be built on authenticity. It requires people who are willing to be real with each other, even when that's uncomfortable. So when you stop seeking approval, you're not destroying the possibility of genuine relationship and community. You're creating it. You're inviting others into authentic connection rather than the shadow play of social performance. Let me end with this. The moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you begin to live. Not the life you think you should live, not the life others want you to live, but your actual life. The one that's been waiting for you all along, beneath all the performance and pretense. And when you begin to live this life, you discover something wonderful. You discover that you're enough. Not perfect, you'll still have flaws, still make mistakes, still have struggles and uncertainties, but you're enough. You don't need anyone's approval to validate your existence. You're already valid. You were always valid. You just couldn't see it while you were so busy trying to earn what you already had. This is the great shift, from seeking to being, from performing to simply existing, from the exhausting effort of trying to become acceptable to the profound peace of recognizing that you already are. This is freedom. This is what it means to finally come home to yourself. Thank you.
It is a curious thing, this tendency we all share, the urge to hold on to people, to hold on to ideas, to hold on to the stories we tell about who we are and what the world is. We clutch at memories of the past, as though replaying them might somehow make them last forever. We grip tightly at visions of the future, as if our grasp could bend time to obey our plans. And yet, in all this holding, we discover a strange weight. Instead of safety, it gives us a kind of suffocation. Instead of comfort, it makes us anxious, always fearing the moment when our grip might slip. Why do we hold on so desperately? It is because we have been taught that to let go is to lose. If I let go of this relationship, I will be abandoned. If I let go of this belief, I will be adrift. If I let go of control, everything will fall apart. And so, with clenched fists, we drag the baggage of yesterday into today and try to pack tomorrow into the same suitcase until we are exhausted under the sheer weight of it. But life, you see, is not meant to be carried like this. Life is a river, not a stone. It moves, it flows, it shifts. And when we try to grasp the current, we only end up with water slipping through our fingers. The tighter we hold, the more we realize we cannot truly hold at all. Consider for a moment the simple act of breathing. You breathe in, and then you must breathe out. If you try to only inhale, clinging to the air as though to lose it would mean to lose your life, you will suffocate. The very act of living requires release. It requires the rhythm of in and out, of taking and giving, of holding and letting go. And yet, when it comes to our attachments, we try to live as though we can only inhale, never exhale. The result is the same suffocation, but this time in our minds and our hearts. Look also at nature's trees. Each autumn, they shed their leaves, releasing what no longer serves them. They do not argue with the season. They do not cling to what has had its time. And because they let go, they are renewed. Spring comes and new leaves burst forth. Imagine if the tree resisted. Imagine if it gripped every leaf in panic, crying, "I cannot let this one go. It is mine. It defines me." What would happen? The tree would rot, unable to grow, unable to flourish. It is only in release that life finds its rhythm. But we, unlike the tree, tell ourselves stories. We imagine that if we let go, we will fall into emptiness. We imagine we are separate little beings standing against the tide of existence, and that if we do not hold on, the tide will wash us away. And so we resist, and we resist until the struggle becomes unbearable. Think of how we hold on to relationships that have already ended in spirit, afraid of the silence that might follow. We hold on to old identities. I am this kind of person. I cannot change. I must always live this way, even when the skin has grown too tight, like clothes from childhood that no longer fit. We hold on to resentments, to grievances, to past mistakes, dragging them behind us like heavy stones, all the while wondering why we feel so tired. But the truth is, letting go is not the opposite of love, nor the opposite of care. To let go is not to reject. It is to recognize the natural movement of things, just as waves rise and fall, just as days begin and end, just as lives appear and dissolve. so too does every form, every moment, follow the rhythm of arising and passing. To resist this rhythm is to resist life itself. It is like trying to stop a river with your hands. You may feel, for a brief instant, that you are succeeding, but soon the current pushes past, stronger than your grip, indifferent to your effort. And then you are left exhausted while the river flows on. But why do we resist so fiercely? Because we mistake holding for control. We believe that if we grip tightly enough, we can preserve what we love, secure what we fear to lose, or shape the future to our design. And yet, have you noticed? The things we cling to most fiercely are often the very ones that slip away. Think of the lover smothered by another's insecurity, who leaves not because of lack of love, but because they cannot breathe under the grip. Think of the person so obsessed with controlling every detail of their life that they leave no room for surprise, no room for spontaneity, and so they find themselves trapped in the very order they desired. Think of the one who cannot release the memory of a wound, and so carries it, reliving the pain again and again, as though it were happening now. In all of this, the fear of letting go is the fear of death in miniature. For to let go is to allow something to end, to allow a moment to pass, a form to dissolve, a self to change. And because we fear the great death, the dissolution of our own body, our own ego, we fear all the little deaths along the way. We imagine that by holding on, we can resist the great tide, keep ourselves intact, but in truth, it is the clinging that breaks us. You may notice this in the smallest of things. Try to hold water in a tight fist, and it escapes. Hold it gently, with an open palm, and it rests with you for a while. Try to clutch at love, and it suffocates. Let it breathe, and it grows. Try to force your life into rigid certainty, and it rebels. Allow it to flow, and it carries you further than you could have planned. So the problem is not that life takes things away. The problem is that we refuse to see that life is always taking and giving, always flowing, always changing. To demand permanence in a world of movement is to fight against the very essence of what is. The suffering of holding on is not only in the loss itself, but in the constant tension, the vigilance, the anxiety of guarding what cannot be guarded. Like a man clutching a rope that is fraying in his hands, we exhaust ourselves trying to prevent the inevitable. And in doing so, we miss the beauty of what is still here, still alive, still present. And so, you may notice, fear grows not from reality itself, but from the stories we weave. If I let this go, I will be nothing. If I release control, life will collapse. These are shadows of thought, not truths. For in fact, you are already letting go in every moment. You let go of each breath, or you would die. You let go of each moment, or time would freeze. You let go of sleep each morning, or the day could never begin. Letting go is already the rhythm of your being. You cannot resist it forever. You can only blind yourself to it. The great paradox is that by clinging, you do not preserve life, you smother it. By resisting change, you do not secure safety, you create fear. By holding on, you do not keep things as they are, you hasten their decay. And so, we must see clearly, the fear of letting go is born from an illusion, the illusion that we are separate from the flow, that life is something happening to us rather than as us. But once you see that you are the river itself, the need to clutch at each drop begins to fade. The beginning of wisdom is to see the cost of holding on, to see that it is not safety, but weight, not love, but suffocation, not freedom, but prison. Only when this is seen can the heart begin to loosen its grip. And so, as you sit here listening, perhaps you can feel in your own life what it is you are clutching. Perhaps a person, perhaps a story, Perhaps an image of yourself. Feel the tension of it, the way it weighs upon you. Notice that it is not the thing itself that weighs you down, but the clinging. And see, if only for a moment, that there may be another way. If holding on binds us in tension, then letting go is the beginning of freedom. Yet, many hear this and immediately recoil. If I let go, won't I lose everything? Won't life spin into chaos? Won't I fall into nothingness? But you see, this is the illusion. For letting go does not mean falling into emptiness, it means falling into life. It means aligning yourself with the rhythm that has been carrying you all along. Think again of breathing. You let go of the breath not to die, but to live. The release makes room for the next inhalation, the next renewal. Imagine if you refuse to exhale, clinging desperately to the air as though your survival depended upon it. You would suffocate. The irony is clear. You live because you let go, again and again. This rhythm of release is everywhere. The trees let go of their leaves so that new growth may appear. The snake sheds its skin, or else it cannot expand. The earth itself shifts, quakes, moves, so that new mountains may rise, new valleys may form. To let go is not a failure of life, but its very condition. Now, notice what happens in you when you release. Perhaps you have experienced it already. You cling to some resentment, some injury from the past. You replay it, you nurse it, you rehearse the words you should have said, and then, one day, perhaps out of exhaustion, you let it go. And what do you feel? Relief, lightness. The world, unchanged in its outer form, suddenly appears brighter. The sky seems wider, the air easier to breathe. Nothing has changed but the grip of your hand, and in that small gesture, everything is transformed. So letting go is not loss, but transformation. It is not the end of love, but the beginning of freedom within love. For when you hold someone too tightly, you do not love them, you possess them. And possession strangles. To love is to let another be, to allow them the freedom of their own movement, their own becoming. And when you grant this, you discover something extraordinary, that love does not vanish when released. It grows, it deepens, it breathes. Letting go of control is much the same. You may imagine that unless you manage every detail, life will collapse into disorder. But in truth, life is already happening without your command. Your heart beats without your orders, your cells divide, your blood flows, your breath moves, the earth spins, the stars burn, all without your intervention. Control is a story, a game we play with ourselves. Life does not wait for your instructions. So what happens when you release this compulsion to control? At first, fear, because the ego imagines it is the master, and to surrender is to die. But beneath that fear is a discovery that life carries you more gracefully than you could ever carry yourself. Like a swimmer who finally stops thrashing and allows the water to hold them, you realize you are buoyant. You do not sink into chaos. You float into harmony. Now, letting go does not mean apathy. It does not mean turning your back on life or abandoning care. It means participating without clinging, engaging without grasping. It is like dancing with a partner. If you clutch at them, the dance is stiff and awkward. If you collapse and refuse to move, the dance cannot happen at all. But if you allow, give and take, guiding and yielding, the dance becomes alive, spontaneous, free. So it is with life. You are not to be a puppet, dragged helplessly, nor are you to be a tyrant, forcing every step. You are to be a dancer, moving with the rhythm, listening, responding, trusting. This is what the Chinese call wu wei, not forcing, not straining, but moving with the grain of the universe. Now, one of the greatest fears in letting go is the fear of death. We cling to life, imagining that if we grip hard enough, we can stave off the inevitable. But death is not the enemy. Death is the great letting go, and without it, life would not be. Just as sleep is necessary to renew the body, so death renews the cycle of existence. The leaf falls, but the tree lives on. The wave dissolves, but the ocean remains. And so, when you let go in small ways of a thought, of a grievance, of a fear, you are practicing the art of dying. You are rehearsing the great surrender that will one day come to us all. And in practicing it, you discover that death is not destruction, but renewal. What falls away makes room for what is to come. Even time itself teaches this. You cannot cling to a single moment. Try as you may to preserve it, the moment passes. The laughter fades, the embrace ends, the sunset gives way to night. And yet, this is not a tragedy, for the very passing makes room for what is next. If the day did not end, the night could not begin. If the note did not fade, the song could not continue. Life is not in the holding of one instant, but in the continuous flow from one to another. So, letting go is not abandonment. It is participation in the rhythm of existence. It is to see that you are not separate from the flow, standing against it, but the flow itself. You are not the hand clutching at the river. You are the river. And once this is seen, the fear begins to loosen. Now, notice in your own life where this might be so. Perhaps there is a person you cannot release, even though the time has passed. Perhaps there is a version of yourself you cling to, though it no longer fits. Perhaps there is a fear you rehearse endlessly, as if preparing for it could prevent it. And see, just for a moment, what it would feel like to open your hand, not to push it away, not to destroy it, but simply to release. Feel the lightness in that image, the freedom. This is the invitation of letting go. And here is the curious thing. When you let go, what is real does not vanish. Love remains, but it is free. The self remains, but it is flexible. Life remains, but it is lighter. What vanishes is the tension, the anxiety, the weight of clutching at shadows. You lose nothing but your chains. So the practice of letting go is not about throwing life away, but about finally receiving it. For as long as your hands are clenched, they cannot receive. Only the open hand can be filled. Only the relaxed heart can feel joy. Only the surrendered mind can discover peace. This is why the sages and mystics, again and again, spoke of surrender, not as defeat, but as liberation, not as loss, but as gain. To surrender is to see that you were never in control to begin with, and that this is not bad news, but the best news possible. For it means you are carried, sustained, supported by something far greater than the little I you believed yourself to be. So when you are afraid of letting go, remember this: you have been letting go all along. Each breath, each moment, each night's sleep, you have already practiced surrender countless times, and each time, life has continued. The fear is a story, not a reality. And when you release even a little, you discover the great secret. Life holds you. The ocean does not drop its waves. The sky does not abandon its clouds. The earth does not reject its children. You belong always. And letting go is the way you remember it. So let yourself soften. Let yourself breathe. Let the clenched fist open. The guarded heart relax. The worried mind fall silent. You will not fall into nothingness. You will fall into everything. For letting go is not the end. It is the beginning of freedom.